If you think New York is the same as any other presidential primary, forget about it. It's a tough tabloid town. What other city, state in the world would greet the #2 Republican presidential candidate with this headline in the Daily News? Take the FU train, Ted. Awfully generous of the newspaper to help him out with the subway directions. And, you know, it's so funny to watch the New York press corps, which is so psyched, so pumped up that there's a New York primary that actually matters. It has been more than 20 years since the state's primary mattered, because usually it's in April and everything's wrapped up, and that's not the case this time on either side. Now, you'd have to say that Donald Trump has a huge advantage on the Republican side, because not just is he leading with 52% in the latest poll that I've seen, but he grew up in Queens. He speaks the language, you know what I'm saying? In fact, dealing with the tabloid press is how Trump became a national celebrity. I mean, he learned that every time he would pick a fight with Rosie O'Donnell or Leona Helmsley or Ed Koch or anybody, he'd get a headline in the New York Post, a gossip item. He'd be interviewed on the local stations. He loves it. It's getting that a pugilistic approach to translate to the nice states, you know, states like Iowa and Wisconsin and Minnesota. That has been the cultural clash. And of course, you got Bernie. Bernie's from Brooklyn. Bernie sounds like he's from Brooklyn, even though he's lived in Vermont for 40 years. So that gives him a certain linguistic advantage, at least. He sounds like Larry David, everybody. You know, there's so many people in New York, so many Bernie characters. Usually you see them on the subway kind of talking to themselves or at the end of the bar. But this guy has beaten Hillary Clinton in 6 out of the last 7 states, and he's not that far behind in a state that Hillary represented for 8 years as a senator. But of course, we know she's actually from suburban Illinois, and she couldn't quite admit to rooting for the Yankees, and she tried to get into the subway yesterday, but she had trouble with her Metro card because Bernie still thinks they use tokens. Been a long time. So it's fascinating that so many New Yorkers are in the mix. That hasn't happened in roughly forever. And what happens is, and Ted Cruz, who got a kind of a Bronx cheer when he went to a Dominican Chinese restaurant in the Bronx and got heckled by some people who said you shouldn't be coming into our immigrant community. I mean, New York's not like any other place in the world. Yes, you have a whole other state. I went to college in Buffalo. It's like Iowa up there. But New York City, of course, is the media magnet, the most it's where all the media are concentrated. It's the center of the universe as far as everybody there believes. And so to survive a New York primary, you've got to be able to run the gauntlet. You've got to be able to deal with the tabloids and the scrums and the charges and the gossip column. It makes for very entertaining coverage. And we're going to get full 2 weeks of it until we move on to Connecticut and Rhode Island and Pennsylvania and these other states. But New York is where it's at. And if you can make it there, it's true. You can probably make it anywhere.